When the Duke had slept a long time, he stood up early in the morning and went to where Bolfriana was sleeping. He wakened her and was cheerful with her, and he bade her get up and go with him. He ordered 12 knights to ready themselves, and he would now ride south to Rome. They all prepared themselves most courteously, with good armor and the best horses. Before midday, they rode out of the city Frittila and traveled their way until they came into the forest. They rode the whole day until 3 o'clock. And then Duke Aki spoke to his men. "We are certainly riding in a dishonorable fashion, if I will not await my kinsman King Thidrek of Bern to ride with him to the feast. That would be a poor welcome if he were to come to Frittila and we weren't even there. We shall now turn back and await him at home." And he turned back his horse, and the others followed. And as they were returning through the forest, they rode a while. A little after sunset, they saw where a man was riding. 2 dogs were running ahead of him. On his left hand, he carried a hawk. He had a beautiful shield bearing the marking of a hawk and of dogs in gold. Aki recognized that it was Earl Iron of Brandinaborg. He called out to his men that they should ride up and kill him. Aki drew his sword, and all of the knights rode toward him. Earl Iron recognized the first man as Duke Aki of Frittila, who had a red shield marked with a lion of gold, and who was the greatest of all fighters and a berserk. They met in the trail and fought immediately. Earl Iron defended himself bravely, but before they stopped, he was separated from his horse and fell to the earth with many great wounds. Duke Aki rode away with his men and left Earl Iron dead. And Aki rode to a house he owned on the edge of the forest and spent the night there. The same evening, King Thidrek of Bern arrived in Frittila with all his men. Vidga the Strong and Heimir were with him, and they remained the night there in Frittila and were welcomed in the hall of Duke Aki. In the morning, they prepared to leave early and to ride after Thidrek's kinsman Aki. They rode out of the city and along the way until they reached the forest. And there on the way, they encountered a man laying dead before them. When they approached, they saw a horse with a knight's saddle. The horse bit at them and pushed at them and would not allow himself to be handled except by his master. And there were also 2 dogs there, growling and whining. And they also did not want to be taken from their master. And there were also 2 hawks in the tree, and they cried out loudly. King Thidrek said that they should climb down and see who this man might be who was laying there, because he was armed in chivalric fashion, and he must have been a man of distinction, who was much loved by his horse, his dogs, and his hawks, who all seemed to have lost a great treasure, when they lost their master. They dismounted and took up the man and looked to see if they could recognize him. And King Thidrek said, "Here has fallen a dear man and a great chieftain, Earl Iron of Brandinaborg. Where might the man be who have killed him? Let us now take care of his body." And they took up a great tree and made with it a worthy grave. They then took Earl Iron and laid him into the grave with all of his armor. And they brought together stones and wood and made a monument, so that whoever came that way would be able to see who lay there. And when they had thus taken care of Earl Iron, Duke Aki rode up with his men. He welcomed King Thidrek, his kinsman, and said that they should ride together to Rome. And King Thidrek asked the Duke if he knew who had killed Earl Iron of Brandinaborg. And the Duke said that he and his men had killed him. King Thidrek replied and asked, "What reason did he give you that you killed such a good man as Earl Iron of Brandinaborg?" And Aki answered, "He wished to hunt two-footed game in the dark forest, with wily deceit and behavior, and the two of them engaged in cunning counsels without my permission." King Thidrek and his kinsman Duke Aki rode now all of their way to Rome. Nordian and 3 other knights thought Earl Iron slow in returning. They rode south on the road in the evening to look for him. And when they came in the dark to the place where he had been killed, and to the place where he was buried, they heard the dogs growling over his path. Nordian rode to them and recognized Earl Iron's dogs, along with his horse and his hogs. They also saw some kind of construction. They rode to it and recognized their lord, Earl Iron, dead with his great wound. They thought it might have been done by Duke Aki. They took the horse and the dogs and the hogs, and they remained in Amlungland until they were sure that Duke Aki of Frittila had done it. After that, they rode north into Hunaland with this news, and told King Attila. He made Nordian Duke over Brandinaborg, and had him rule the land that Earl Iron had had. It became known in Langobardland that a count had died named Aki Amlungatrausti. He left behind 2 sons with his wife, and both were still children. One was named Egard and the other Aki, as his father had been called before him. And their mother was called Bolfriana. She was the fairest of all women. The elder Aki had had the same father as King Erminrek, and had been a most powerful man. King Thidrek and 100 of his knights rode out, and along with them was Vidga, his good friend and comrade. And they rode their way to Rome to meet with King Erminrek. He now presented his mission that he wished to ask for Bolfriana of Drekanfil, for the hand of his best friend, Vidga. King Erminrek welcomed this suggestion and said, "Vidga will be as true to me as he has been to you in the past, and as a good friend. Then I will give you this woman, and the castle as well, and you shall be their count over everything." And the decision of King Thidrek and King Erminrek was thus made that Vidga should go and marry Bolfriana and be the count of King Erminrek. King Thidrek rode now back to his own land. And just as each of us will have to die at one point in time, on some day, before we return, it was Jarl Iron's turn to leave the face of this earth at that point in time. So let us all come back here for part 50 of the Thidrekssaga, to make all those names live just a little while longer, as the stories were intended to. So thanks for tuning in, and see you again next time, back here in the Hall of Sagenheim.